Welcome to this walkthrough of an e-learning, this time focusing on cocaine. It's been made available by the Western Region Drug and Alcohol Task Force website. In this module, we hope to be looking at a number of different areas, including looking at the history of cocaine, its different forms it comes in, portrayal in the media, etc. We'll also be looking at some of the data, particularly in relation to Ireland, its effects on the body, both short and long term, and recent changes in the European cocaine market. We'll also be considering harm reduction strategies. So we're aiming to increase the working knowledge of cocaine issues, to develop approaches that help clients from a harm reduction principle and supported with a strong evidence base. At the end of it, we hope that you've increased your knowledge around cocaine, particularly within Ireland, and increased in also some of the knowledge around the current issues involved and a familiarisation with harm reduction principles. There are 6 topics in this module and we'll be working through them in turn. There's also an optional assessment which, if you go onto the Western Region Drug and Alcohol Task Force website, you're more than welcome to take it there, and you'll also find a range of other e-learning modules available for you. Let's begin with the history. We know that the coca plant has been grown in South America for something in the region of 8,000 years. Here we can see it growing wild. It's also strongly connected, of course, to local myths and legends as well. Cocaine itself is actually an extraction from the coca plant and undergoes a chemical process. The first commercially available product was back in 1879, where it was used to try and treat morphine dependency. Following that, a whole industry mushroomed, using cocaine as one of the active ingredients. You can see here, for example, for toothache drops and for shampoos even. It was probably most famously used in Coca-Cola. It was used for a relatively small time and in very, very low quantities, although coca leaves are still used to the modern times, but cocaine does not form any part of the process. We also know that cocaine has played a major role in the film industry, and many films have featured cocaine. This has led to a certain glamorization. One can think of films like Scarface or Trainspotting going back some way, or in more modern times, Netflix productions such as Narcos have strongly featured cocaine. During the 1980s, we saw the appearance also then of crack cocaine. Crack cocaine, whilst chemically identical to cocaine, makes it into a smokable form. And it's the production of these rocks and the sound that goes with them in the production of them, the cracking, that gives it its name. This took off particularly among poorer areas in American cities before spreading to other countries, including in Europe. As I said, the chemical structure is the same, and this removes some of the impurities but makes it into a stronger, more powerful product than cocaine. It's often cheaper, although its users often have more stigma attached to their use. It also seems that people are more likely to become dependent on it, and in many countries the penalties involved for possession or dealing are much higher than those of cocaine. In this module, we will, however, be focusing on the traditional form of cocaine rather than crack. So we'll finish up with a little question there. From which civilization is the coca plant most likely to have originated? And therefore we can nicely put in the right answer there. Turning now to prevalence, we'll look at the figures that are relevant both in Europe and in Ireland. If we have a look here, we can see, based on the most recent reports that we have available, that approximately 1 in 20 Europeans in the 15 to 64 age range have used cocaine at least once in their lifetime. That's what we understand by lifetime use. About 2.5% have used it with younger people in the past year. Let's look at what the Irish figures are to see how they compare. So the figure here is for 15-16-year-olds. So it appears to be significantly higher once that translates through to 15 to 34-year-olds. Somewhere in the region of nearly double the usage rate in Europe, and therefore not surprisingly, again, still somewhat higher than the European average is the lifetime use among Irish adults. If we were to break this down a little bit more in terms of the age range, it appears to be very much connected to younger users, but particularly those, be it in the late teens, 20s and through to the early 30s. This seems to be connected very much to people who are very much going out on the nightlife scene, parties and festivals, and are perhaps more likely to have disposable income as well. So if we just put their little quick question here, is how do we compare to the rest of Europe, and generally use in Ireland is greater. Let's look at price and delivery next. We'll be looking at the price, delivery and slang. A common price for cocaine in Ireland is round about the €70 per gram mark. Sometimes it might be slightly lower or higher depending on the quality, or the purity we should say, of the product, and several other factors as well. One of those being is how successful the Gardaí are in intercepting deliveries of cocaine into Ireland. But €70 is very much the benchmark that we use, and it's the price that Gardaí use for the street price of drugs that they seize. The average purity levels in Ireland appear to be around about the 40% mark currently. The delivery of that cocaine takes place obviously within criminal organisations, and certainly there's been some research to say that this can be in many places very well organised. In some cities around the world, cocaine can be delivered quicker than pizza, and that would certainly be true of some Irish cities as well. Other people may arrange for home deliveries, and for example the dark net is very useful for people there, because they believe at least that they will have cocaine delivered via postal services without detection. If we turn to looking at some of the slang involved, whilst there is a vast range out there, this is some of the more common forms of slang that we see. So for example, we get blow and Charlie. Horse actually relates to heroin. See, nice kind of straightforward one there. Blueies tends to be more things like sleeping tablets and things like that, or even Viagra. Snow, you can think of the sort of powdery form of it. It kind of makes sense. Speed is amphetamines, and coke, pretty straightforward there. And so we have a common slang term for cocaine, and we have C. Let's now take a look at the effects of cocaine. We'll be looking here at the effects on the body and the brain, and also looking at some of the risk factors involved that can lead to more problems. We'll begin by looking at a couple of short videos. So if we move on, we can look at some of those increased risk factors. One is certainly the combination with other drugs, and in particular alcohol we'll look at in a moment. If the cocaine is of a higher purity level, then that has more effect on the body, although it's also true that those other products, of whatever purity level the cocaine is at, there might well be other toxic substances mixed in there, and those two will obviously have their effects. More pressure is being put on the body if a person is choosing to have sex while using cocaine, or exercising or anything else like that. Cocaine and alcohol is a particular problem because in the liver cocoethylene is produced. This sticks around in the body much longer and is much more powerful than either cocaine or alcohol by themselves. Another connected issue is when cocaine is used during sexual activity. This certainly is a concern around whether consent is appropriately given, because people can often feel far more sexually excited or even aggressive with the use of cocaine. Inhibitions are often lowered for some people, and this means that it's more likely to lead to unsafe sexual practices, rougher sex, for example, or not using contraceptives, which means that the transmission of infections such as HIV or hepatitis C are more likely to take place. Probably the most well-known effect is the effect on the heart, and certainly it's putting pressure on the heart, as cocaine is a strong stimulant. And as you can see here, there's a whole range of different effects which could well lead to the need for hospitalization or certainly emergency medical attention. In the worst cases, this may lead to what we might call an overdose or a poisoning situation. The last year that we actually have figures for in Ireland, for 2021, cocaine appears to be implicated in 107 deaths. In many cases, this is also connected to the use of alcohol as well. So, finally, our little question for topic 4. When alcohol is mixed with cocaine, the effects can last up to, and we'll put it in here. That's rather embarrassing, isn't it? Let's go with 2.5 hours. There we go. Let's turn to looking at adulterants. Many products are added to cocaine, normally in an attempt to actually produce more profit. Certainly fillers are added. Any white powder or slightly off-white powder could be added, and again this would bulk out the product and make more money for the person selling it. It's also likely that other products are added which themselves have an effect on the body, either similar or fairly similar to the effects of cocaine. For example, anesthetics that are used in the dental laboratories, they could well be used, and there's a whole vast range, as we can see there, of different products that can be put into cocaine, which people may or may not realize is actually going into the product that they're purchasing. Attempts have been made to remove cocaine entirely and to replace it with a product that has very similar effects. And some of these are listed, for example, through the EUDA early warning system. The EUDA has now replaced the MCD-DDA and is the European Union Drugs Agency. Its system for pointing out and analysing new products that come along is very useful, and here are some of the ones that they've listed here, of which the most well known is probably methadone. Here we can look at some of the common polydrug combinations that take place. This tends to be more of a specialist kind of market, and people may combine them themselves, or they may be combined by drug dealers and sold on as a product. So here we've got the combination of cocaine and ketamine. So both you've got an hallucinogenic, a dissociative in this case, and a stimulant at the same time. Because sometimes people are looking for effects that are a variety of effects rather than just a straightforward stimulation of cocaine, or it may be to compensate for some of the effects that they see from the product. We have a Frisco special, obviously referencing San Francisco there, and not surprisingly the hallucinogenic LSD is part of that mix there. We also then have just mixing with LSD by itself, and for some people they combine both the opiate aspects of heroin and the stimulant of cocaine to use something which is often called snowball. And so we hear NPS. What does it stand for? Quite straightforwardly, we have our new psychoactive substances. Finally, let's look at some EU reports into this area. In particular, we'll be using the 2024 European Drug Report produced by the EUDA. They point out that the cultivation of the coca leaf and cocaine production still remains largely centred in the South American countries. For the European market, it is often imported through Belgium, the Netherlands or Spain, where the level of importation means that the retail level, in terms of purity and price, still remains high. For those users, it can be quite difficult for support services to access them, partly because cocaine users may be well socially integrated and feel very much a strong stigma about using support services, and those who are in marginalised communities may be difficult to reach anyway. The European Drug Report points out that there are a number of particular issues at the moment. Partly it may be around adulterants, and in particular they're pointing out fentanyl, if that's added to the cocaine supply, could cause a spike in the number of overdoses. It's also at high purity levels, and that in itself may cause more problems. This has certainly led, it is suggested, to an increase in the number of first-time admissions to specialised treatment places. The HSE has put out a leaflet where it outlines some of the harm reduction advice that can be given. This is important with working with clients. It includes things like avoid using alone, only using one drug at a time, and in particular never mixing with alcohol. It also points out that it's useful to start low and basically slow things down between uses, to avoid the clumping of cocaine and to try and keep that as sterile as possible. And because of the connection to sexual activity, it's important to try and remember to use protection as well in the forms of condoms. So, to bring things together there, the level of cocaine purity across Europe is certainly, we can say, at its highest use by historical standards. Just to finish, there's a whole range of different reports that you can have a look at there and connect to in the e-learning. We'll skip the quiz, as we said, and we'll also skip the survey as well. So, thank you for attending. Much appreciated.